Hello and welcome to Access Asia. I'm Yuka Hwaye and these are our main stories. Indian officials are furious after China renamed 11 places in Arunachal Pradesh, a disputed Himalayan border region under Indian control, which Beijing considers part of southern Tibet. It's known as the most dangerous runway in the world. We'll have a bird's-eye view of a tiny airfield in the Nepalese mountains, where tricky landings are a risky but vital part of everyday life. And a cannabis pipe dream going up in smoke. A year after legalization, marijuana remains a politically divisive issue in Thailand ahead of elections. Diplomatic tension has flared up once again between India and China over territories that both sides claim as their own. The disputed and poorly defined border between the two countries has been a source of tension for decades. Despite more than 50 rounds of talks since the 1980s, military flare-ups and skirmishes have continued and intensified in 2020. France 24's international affairs commentator Oliver Farry is here with me. Oliver, thank you for coming. Now, tell us about the latest developments then. What triggered the spat?
Well, on April 1st, China's Ministry of Civil Affairs said it would standardise 11 place names in the Indian state of Arunachal Pradesh, which China calls Zhangnan or South Tibet. Now, this effectively is renaming them in Chinese. India responded angrily with language that's actually quite reminiscent of Beijing's rhetoric at times, saying that Arunachal Pradesh is and has been always an integral and inalienable part of India, and attempts to assign made-up, invented names will not alter this reality. But China has border disputes with India in two regions. One of those it controls, which is Aksai Chin, which is in Xinjiang, which is claimed by India as part of Ladakh Union territory. The other is Arunachal Pradesh. China says Zhangnan has been part of China since ancient times, which is familiar language from Beijing regarding its many territorial claims. It doesn't really stand up to scrutiny, given that China's territory has expanded and contracted greatly over millennia. There is also another possible motive looming. Between April 10th and 21st, India and the United States will take part in Air Force combat exercises at the Kalikunda Air Base in West Bengal. Japan will also participate as an observer. That's something that possibly could have raised Beijing's shackles as well.
Now, the territorial dispute between China and India is a long-running problem. Why has it resurfaced as a hot-button issue in recent years?
The reasons are largely strategic, mainly related to resources. The Himalayas are a very, very vast resource of water for both countries. 7 of India's rivers rise in Tibet, and one of those is the Brahmaputra, and Delhi is very, very concerned by a mega dam project that China has in Tibet on that, which would be the world's biggest hydroelectric power station. So India is very worried about being cut off from that. China also dislikes the large number of Tibetan exiles that are present in Arunachal Pradesh, and has for a long time refused to issue visas to residents of the state. It has also raised disputes whenever Indian leaders have visited there, and also the Tibetan leader, the Dalai Lama. The first such list of standardised names was issued in 2017 after a visit by the Dalai Lama in 2017.
So it was a retaliation on the part of China.
Right.
And now both countries are now key economic players in the region. What's the position of the international community on this border issue?
The international community generally recognises the status quo, which follows the McMahon Line, which was agreed between the British Empire and the Republic of China in 1914. It hasn't really been deviated since then. The White House did say that it opposed any unilateral attempts by China to actually change any place names in the case of Arunachal Pradesh.
Oliver Farry, thank you so much for your analysis. The global drive towards electric cars is having ripple effects in some developing countries. Indonesia, the world's largest nickel producer, has seen a huge mining rush for the metal, which is a critical component in EV batteries. But the boom is threatening livelihoods and the environment in certain regions. Selina Sykes reports.
These women are on the hunt for what is becoming a scarce commodity on Indonesia's Wawoni Island. Their livelihoods depend on the harvesting of clove trees, used as a spice or as a fragrance in cosmetics. Royani and her family saw hundreds of their trees cleared earlier this year to make way for nickel mining.
I couldn't believe all the clove trees had been cleared. I was shaking. It was our source of income. We had dreamed of sending my child to college. And when we went up to find the trees were all gone, I was devastated.
Royani and a dozen villagers take turns keeping watch on the clove trees that are left. Locals have staged several protests like this one in a bid to stop nickel miners from clearing the forest. But they're up against Goliath. As global demand soars for nickel used in lithium-ion batteries and stainless steel. China alone invested more than $8 billion in Indonesia last year. Locals and rights groups say the boom in nickel mining is threatening farmers' rights and is harming the environment.
If I keep quiet, then I'm allowing our future and our children's futures to be destroyed.
The effect is clear to see in this coastal village. Locals say the rust-red sludge and murky water are caused by the contamination of soil waste from the mines. Mining companies, though, say they are acting responsibly.
Have we implemented good mining practices that respect the environment and farmers' livelihoods? We have to put these in place to attract investment from Europe and the US.
Not all locals oppose nickel mining. Some have secured work and small business owners have seen a boost in revenue. The industrial drive is part of the Indonesian government's programme to reach developed nation status.
A short, inclined runway high up in the mountains. It's every pilot's nightmare. The one near the village of Lukla in Nepal is considered the most dangerous landing strip in the world. But for locals and visitors, it's well worth the risk. James Vecina has the story.
Approaching destination, and in the distance, all there is a tiny runway. 2,800 meters high up in the Himalayas, Lukla Airport is short and slanted. It's 460 meters long and has a 12-degree incline.
It is difficult with a lot of reasons. It's because of the changing weather. And also this is very high altitude. This is 9,300 feet. So over here it's also about the engine performance. So there are a lot of challenges, but then it's kind of thrilling.
And taking off is also part of these challenges. The runway ends on the edge of a cliff.
Downslope actually helps us to gain the speed. But then in case of any emergency, then it's critical. That's what it means. Because we don't want to go into the terrain. That's what we want to escape it, so yeah.
Built in 1964, there have been several accidents here. The last one happened in 2019, when an aeroplane crashed into a nearby helicopter. 2 years earlier, another plane missed the runway on its descent, crashing into the side of the mountain. Most of the tourists who fly in here are on their way to Mount Everest.
It's impressive that they managed to land on this short runway.
I'm not a person who is afraid of airplanes, but this one is impossible not to be a little bit afraid. You look to the side and you see mountains really, really close to them, and the lane is short, so it's frightening.
Those in the control tower decide every morning if the weather is suitable or not to open the landing strip.
We need 5 kilometer visibility to open airport for the safety of the aircraft, because it's for VFR visual flight rules. They cannot land less than that visibility. It will be difficult for them.
The village can't be reached by car, meaning that foods and other goods are also flown in.
There's medicine, biscuits, cigarettes, and bedding over here. If it weren't for the planes, we'd have to bring everything up by donkey.
The goods are then carried across the mountains. This man is lifting 100 kilos on his back.
You probably think this is hard, but this is easy for me. We're used to it. I'm glad I can get work this way.
It's all part of daily life for residents in Lukla.
To Thailand now, where fanfare legislation legalising cannabis a year ago has fallen flat for businesses. Decriminalisation has got bogged down in a political limbo over how to regulate its use. Nick Rushworth tells us more.
The promise of a cannabis bonanza in Thailand is going up in smoke. Producers were hoping to cash in after the drug was legalised a year ago, but an umbrella law to regulate its use is not in place. The director at this cannabis farm says political wrangling has hampered his business operations.
The most important thing in an investment is time. If anything is delayed, it will affect the entire structure of the industry. Whether it be the systems, the workers, or the products, the delay clearly has an effect on us all.
Cannabis decriminalisation has become a political football ahead of elections on the 14th of May. The opposition is blocking the law, saying it was rushed through. One political analyst says the legislation has been poorly executed.
This could have been done much better. It could have resulted in an upgrading of Thai tourism. It could provide medicinal usage. But because of all the politics involved, it has left a bad taste now and a bit of a legal mess.
A deluge of cannabis smuggled in from abroad has swamped Thailand, hurting local growers and driving down prices. The future of cannabis policy now depends on which parties are in power after Thailand's elections next month.
That's it for this week's edition of Access Asia. Do stay tuned for more world news here on France 24.